Last Sunday, we talked about our core purpose as a church and as a body of believers. Why do we get together? Why do we exist? Why do we come together? And we recognize that it's all about a person. It's all about Jesus, meeting Jesus who loves us and who loves you. Today, I want us to talk about how does meeting Jesus then shape us, change us as a community, as a church. And Jesus told us in John 13. Turn there in your Bibles or on your phones. We're going to look at John 13, just a few verses 33 through 35. Let me set the scene for you. Jesus is together with all of his disciples who have been following him for 3 years now. Right? They are really the first community of Jesus followers. They are the first church. And it's the night that he's going to be arrested and betrayed. And he's in that upper room with them where he celebrates the Passover feast with them. And he spends a lot of time teaching them there, preparing them for what's about to happen. He's preparing them for his arrest that's going to happen in just a few minutes. He's preparing them for his death and his resurrection. And maybe most importantly, he's preparing them for what life is going to be for them after he's gone, after he dies, is resurrected, and ascends into heaven, and now they go out as the church, as his followers. And this is what he says to them. One of his core teachings now in verses 33 through 35, he says, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I will tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." At the core of his message, a new command I give to you. Love one another. Really, it's an old command made new. Love has been the core of God's message all along, and Jesus renews it and makes it new again. Right? Love is he says, must be the obvious defining feature of this little group, of this little community of Jesus followers. Love, he says, must be the obvious and defining feature of our little group, of our community. Right? Two kinds of love. Love for Jesus, obviously. That's what he's been preaching for 3 years. Last week we talked about how it's the love of Jesus, it's meeting Jesus and loving him that unifies us, that not only brings us together, but holds us together. And now Jesus focuses them on their love for each other. He tells how we are to love each other. Did you catch that? He goes on to say that as I have loved you, now you love each other. As Jesus has loved us. That's our standard. And that standard, as he's about to show for them, as he's about to model for them, is a deep, sacrificial, radical, lay down your life for a friend kind of love. So that's how we love each other here. We are to be a community that is defined by love. Love one another as I have loved you. Loving each other may sound simple, but it isn't easy when we take this command seriously. And Jesus was honest with his disciples about both the cost and the benefits of following him, of being a part of a loving family of God. Let me tell you another story from Mark chapter 10. You'll want to turn there in your Bibles too. Mark chapter 10. It's the story when a rich young man comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, I want to follow you. Tell me what it takes to follow you. And Jesus talked about being obedient, and this man says, I followed all the commands. I know everything. And I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing better than most. And then Jesus looks at him and says, you need to sell everything you own. Give it to the poor, and then come follow me. What Jesus is saying to him is your love for me must be greater than your love for anything else in the world. Right? Jesus' question to him, and really his question to each of us in that interchange, is, what is most important to you in life? Identify that. For him, it was his money. Okay? For you, what is the most important thing in your life? Now, do you love me more than you love that thing? Would you choose me over choosing that other thing that you love the most? Would you give all that away in love for me and in love for the people around you? Whew, that's a big question. Right? The rich young ruler walks away sad because he's not willing to give that up. And Peter, with the disciples, immediately says in verse 28 to Jesus, hey, that's what we've done. He says, we've left everything to follow you, Jesus. And here's Jesus' response, verses 29 through 31. He says, truly I tell you, no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me and the gospel will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age. Homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and fields, along with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. If we meet Jesus, he says, if we choose to love him, it means that we will lose something. We will have to leave something behind if we are going to follow Jesus. Right? Because you can't turn to Jesus without also turning away from something else. Loving Jesus, he says, will come at a cost. Like the rich young man in this story, we must love Jesus more than anything and everything else. And there are some things, there are some people that I love a lot. And I really should love them a lot. Jesus here in this passage gives us a list of some loves that are most precious to us. He says, are you willing to leave behind home, brothers, sisters, mothers or fathers, children or fields for me? That list focuses the most on some things that we love the most, right? So much in that list has to do with family, has to do with home, it has to do with the people that we love. Because Jesus knows that the relational cost of following him is the highest cost that we pay. Right? Family is so important, and it should be. Right? Relationships in our lives, relationships of love and belonging and joy, those are gifts from God. And he tells us all throughout his word to love them well, to care well for your family, right? Children need to care well for your parents. Parents, you need to care well for your children. You need to love each other. I know I love my family. But Jesus realizes here that family can often become an idol for us. It's our modern day idol. And so I hopped online this week and I did a Google search of wall decorations that have to do with family. If you want to decorate your house, hang a picture on your wall, put a decal on your wall about family. And so much came up. And they had slogans like this: family first, or family over everything, or family is everything. Now, I'm not judging if that's what's hanging on your wall. Right? They were really beautiful pictures. But those phrases remind me to warn all of us to be careful. Be careful. When we declare that nothing is more important than family, Jesus raises his hand and says, what about me? Because I am more important. If Jesus is not more important than your family, then your family has become your idol. Then my family has become my idol. Because Jesus makes it clear that loving him and following him might mean disagreeing with people that you love the most, your parents, your children, your spouse, your siblings. It might mean living out different values and priorities in life. It might mean living differently, talking differently, giving differently. Being obedient to Jesus might sometimes mean moving away from them. In extreme cases, it might mean being rejected by them. Some of you here know exactly that kind of price. In fact, all of us, everybody has paid some relational price to follow Jesus. Some more than others. But we are all here in the family of God at a cost. And it's a hard price to pay. I ran across a quote this week from an author named Rosaria Butterfield. And she wrote this line that struck me. She wrote, "We may never know the treacherous journey people have taken to land in this seat next to us." She's talking about sitting next to the person at church, right? We may never know the treacherous journey that person has taken to land in the seat next to you. Because choosing to follow Jesus always means that we're choosing to leave something behind. But Jesus goes on then to promise that if we are willing to endure that cost, if we're willing to choose to love him above all else, that we will also then receive even more in return. Right? Notice his promise that comes in verses 29 and 30 that we just read. He said, no one who leaves these things behind, who is willing to pay this cost, right? No one who leaves these things behind will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age. Right? So following Jesus, we receive him, which is enough in itself. Right? His gift of forgiveness and grace, salvation and freedom. What awesome gifts. That's more than enough in itself to make whatever cost is worth it. But he goes on to say that in this life, we will receive far more than we leave behind when we choose to follow him. What does Jesus mean by that? Well, he gives us another specific list of things that we will receive. He says on that list are homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, fields, and he adds in a dose of persecution. Does that list sound familiar? It's the same list of things that we gave up in order to follow him, with the persecution added in. Now, notice This list doesn't have Jesus promising to make us wealthy or healthy or to give us an easy life. But he does promise the love of a family and the riches of belonging to a community of profound love and belonging. Right? When he promises here homes, he's not promising home ownership. You'll get enough money to be able to buy a home and always have a roof over your head. No, he's promising a place to belong in each other's homes, where in this community you are welcomed and understood and belong. And when he promises mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, he's promising people in your life who will be true family to you. He's promising a community where you are loved and where you truly belong. Right? The high cost of following Jesus is a relational cost. And the high blessing that comes from following Jesus is a relational blessing. It's family. And we are the fulfillment of that promise right here. This Mountain View community, this Mountain View family, this place to belong in the family of God is what Jesus was promising right here. Because when we follow Jesus, we receive not only the love of Jesus into our lives, but we receive the love of his family. Yep. We may think, what's the big deal of this church community? Is it really that big of a deal? Is it really that important and that powerful and that valuable? Come on. You know what Jesus said? He says here, it's 100 times better. 100 times. Do we value this community that much? Right? Jesus shows how important it is that we strive to become more and more a family of God that knows how to love each other and does it. That we are defined by love for each other. And that kind of love that Jesus is calling us to demands selflessness instead of selfishness when it comes to being a part of this community. I mean, look back at what Jesus said about our love for each other. Right? He says in the passage we read at the very beginning that we love each other, we're supposed to love each other just like he loved us. Talk about a selfless, generous, bold kind of love. Think about the way Jesus loved you. He held nothing back for you. He loved you enough that he was willing to offer himself fully for you on the cross. He was willing to die for you. He gave everything out of love for you. And he says that's how we are supposed to love each other now. We offer ourselves completely to each other in this family. So in love, we share the blessings that we've been given in this life. We share them with each other to help meet each other's needs and care for each other. And in love, we also share the burdens that we carry in this life as we help each other find encouragement and support and strength. We love each other as Jesus has loved us. Here is where we find true family. When we are living and loving in words and in actions as God called and designed us to live. I love, did you notice how Jesus lists 3 generations of family here? Mother, father, brother, sister, children. I think he's intentional in listing those 3 generations because everyone here has something to offer in the family. Everyone belongs and everyone's important. In this community, God gives us spiritual children. The young, the spiritual children who are there for us to love and encourage and to teach. He gives us spiritual brothers and sisters who walk this journey of faith with us and encourage us along the way. He gives us spiritual mothers and fathers who are there to teach us and to model faithfulness and to share their wisdom that they've gathered over the years. That's what a healthy family looks like. And when we get this right, as we learn to love each other, that's when God will grow us. Look back at John 13, the verse that we started with. Remember, Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love each other as I have loved you." He goes on to say, "By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." By this, everyone will know. Our love is how we introduce Jesus to the world around us. Our love is our witness. Because our love is different from the way the world loves. Our love for each other is unexpected. It's shocking to a world that lacks love. And our love is the kind of love and belonging that people in this world are searching for and longing for. Our love is our witness. Now, if you want to learn more about the love God calls us to, read the short letter of 1 John, because that book is all about love. Let me just read a couple passages from there. Right, in 1 John chapter 4, this passage boldly echoes Jesus' command. If you want affirmation in this call to love, listen to this. 1 John 4, 19 through 21. He writes, we love each other because he, Jesus, first loved us. Whoever claims to love God and yet hates his brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command. Anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. Okay, and then he describes what that love looks like. 1 John chapter 3, he says, this is the message you have heard from the beginning. We should love one another. And this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us love not with words or speech, but with action and in truth. We love with our words, yes. John says we love with our lives. And when we learn how to love like that, how to love each other as Jesus loved us, the world will take notice. The world will see Jesus. And God will then entrust us with the people that he is bringing into his family. As a much younger pastor, I heard another pastor speaking who turned the whole church growth strategy. How do you grow your church, right? What are the systems? What are the programs? He turned that whole strategy on its head for me with 3 words. He simply said, healthy things grow. Healthy things grow. And you don't need to force them to grow, right? You don't need to tell them to grow. If they're healthy, they grow. So I bought, a few years ago, a packet of 3 tiny little plants in a little bucket about this size, 3 little buckets. They were cactus, right? And now, 5 years later, that plant that came about this big in a tiny little bucket is about this big. And I didn't need to tell it to grow. I didn't need to coach it and teach it. All I needed to do was give it a healthy environment. I put it in good dirt and I kept it watered, and it knew what to do. It grew. I don't need to tell my plants to grow, they just do it. I don't need to tell my children. You don't need to tell your children to grow. You don't need to coach them and teach them. They grow naturally as long as they're in a healthy environment. If they have the healthy nutrients they need and the exercise and the safety and protection, then they will grow, because healthy things grow. It's true of churches too. As we strive to become a healthy church, loving Jesus, loving each other, we will grow. We will grow internally, spiritually, as God grows within us. And we will grow externally as God trusts people into our community and into our care. If we focus only on how are we going to grow and ignore church health, we'll lose both of them. We just passed our 5-year mark together here. And I remember 5 years ago, I can clearly remember God's conviction to me to focus on church health here at Mountain View Church. So for 5 years, we've focused on letting God make us a healthier community, a healthy spiritual family. And I think God's done some good work here. And you know what else he's done? As we have become healthier, God has brought people to us. He has grown us, because healthy things grow. I'm so grateful to God for his work growing us healthy inside and out. And that's how Jesus said it would work. Let me just clarify. In Mark 10, Jesus is not calling us to abandon our families. Okay? Don't walk away from your family unnecessarily. And I hope that you don't have to. Instead of calling us to abandon our earthly families, he's inviting us to live as a true spiritual family, filled with love and grace and encouragement, loving Jesus and loving each other. It's the beauty of this community of love that will make Jesus known to the world, that God can use for his kingdom. Healthy things grow. So let's grow healthy together as the loving family of God, called to be Mountain View Church, loving each other as Jesus loved us. And let's then let God grow his kingdom in us and through us.